Hello and welcome to the Schneider Family Fun Hour, starring Martin Schneider, Mickey Schneider, with guest appearance by Dan Ludwig, featuring the musical talents of Ashley Simpson and the band Berlin from Top Gun. And now, take it away, Martin Schneider.
You remembered to say your own name at this time.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is nice. You included yourself.
Gross.
Hello and welcome to Breaking Mayberry, the show about family things. You know, families, and how you hate yours, and why old television might be the reason for it. I am, as Dan just pointed out, one of your hosts, Marty Schneider, and he is the other host, Dan Ludwig. Joining us today, we have, this is one of our episodes where we decided to bring on someone who knows more about the topic that the Andy Griffith show gets into than we do. So we brought on someone who does not want us to call her an expert, but also happens to have the same mother and father as me. This is my sister, Mickey Schneider, nay Hannah. Mickey, hey, thanks for being on.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hey.
It is so great to see what happens when Marty has a family member on this podcast. I do not think he was really prepared for how uncomfortable this was going to make him. It slowly dawned. Mickey, did you also see it kind of dawn on his face what this was going to be?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what to expect. I just thought it was my brother just doing his thing.
So, Mickey's never listened to our podcast because she doesn't listen to podcasts where people don't get murdered.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
One day we do need to incorporate true crime into this podcast just to chase that sweet, sweet last podcast on the left money. Like, we just gotta, like, do one episode about serial killers. Yeah! We do just like some light talking about murder, and then our marriages and our upcoming vacation to Boca Raton, which is, from what I understand, what my favorite murderer is. Yeah, I've listened to 4 episodes, but I from what I got, it was 45% serial killers, and then mostly just them talking about what their upcoming vacation plans were.
Yeah, it's these two ladies are always really, really chill about the gruesome topics they're about to take on. They're always just like, okay, and then they found her head below the overpass. Hey, do you like food? Blue Apron.
I made some great paella last week.
Man, you're dogging on my favorite podcast here. I'd say it's more like, we're going to leave out this detail, but it was really bad. And also, let's make fun of this really weird name, like something about an onion, and then go into that.
Oh, well,
that's more about what it is.
Oh, well, making fun of weird names is something we never do here on Breaking Mayberry. That's humor that's below us. We would never understand that.
I think it is also, from everything I've heard, the best true crime podcast, just because on the it's like head and shoulders above all the others, because it doesn't seem to be on the serial killer's side, which is like a lot of them.
No, and they're definitely like, what I love about them is they're just kind of like, we're not an expert, but also listen to us because we're experts. But again, we're not experts. It's just a casual conversation, like you're talking to your friends, kind of like you two are doing.
Yeah. So
about something they're interested in.
So let's go ahead and kind of talk about this. So, Mickey, one of the reasons I want to bring you on is because even though you say you're not an expert, you're more of an expert than the two of us. So, this episode actually kind of, like, this episode of the Andy Griffith show kind of gets into, it's a good cross-reference of, I'd say, my area of expertise, which is labor relations, and your area of expertise, which is childhood behavior and childhood development. And yeah, child behavior. You have a degree, you're working on a second degree in childhood development. You've worked for, almost 10 years with children and with different behavioral, I'm going to say behavioral issues. You want to, like, give your credentials here real quick?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in child development, and then I'm working on my master's right now, again, in education and child development. Children have behaviors is kind of what I say. So I work on a lot of social emotional regulation and coping skills, which is kind of what we all work on. A lot of like trauma and mental health goes into that hand in hand. It's kind of what I do with families and children.
So we had to bring you on today because we're getting into a good old Andy Griffith parenting episode, which always have the worst morals that I can imagine. So, Mickey, this is also the only episode of the Andy Griffith Show you've ever watched, and will probably be the only episode of Breaking Babe you ever listen to.
If at all, I don't. There's a solid chance she does not listen to it after this airs.
But it's good, though. I have some backup to confirm here. This was not an important thing in our household. Like, some families, especially people like in the South, this is a very important thing for them. I had never really watched any of this until we started doing this podcast. This was not a thing that our parents gave a shit about. Of course, our parents are also fairly young. Our parents are Gen Xers, absolutely. So that may have had something to do with it. But, like, my memories of watching TV with Dad are, like, the A-Team.
Yeah.
Sure. I was still an infant for that.
Did you guys have, like, a family TV show? Like the Schneiders sit down to watch The Office or something?
Okay, no, like, I was always half asleep while you two watch, like, Mystery Science Theater or X-Files or something like that, and then I would wake up and get freaked out by some weird shit that was going on the TV.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That sounds
some weird. It was always like Michaela falls asleep on the couch, and Marty and Dad are gonna watch some weird sci-fi shit, and then I wake up when there's like a crab thing coming out of the screen.
Yeah, you don't want to wake up halfway through the X-Files as a child. That sounds scarring.
To be fair, I think Dad's thing was always just like he was gonna watch whatever he wanted to watch and did not give a shit which kids were in the room. Like,
pretty much, yeah.
Like, there was no reason for me to be watching the Howard Stern show at age 11, Dad.
Jesus Christ!
What are you doing?
How are you? Let me watch like Rocky Horror Picture Show over and over
you
and over.
You loved that movie. That was your favorite movie.
I loved that movie.
Dad was watching Rocky Horror Picture Show?
No, Michaela was.
I was. I was like, I'm Columbia, and I just practiced tap dancing. I'm like 8 years old, just like, this is fine. Everything's great.
Mickey was into John Waters before I was, because she would watch Crybaby over and over on repeat.
And Hairspray, the original Hairspray.
Yeah. What? All right. What age is this that you started watching John Waters movies?
Like 8 to 11. That was like my.
This is such a peek behind the curtain. Holy shit.
Yeah, they didn't care.
The Andy Griffith Show was not a big deal in our household. Why did we start doing this? I have no idea. But
a series of Twitter jokes that spun wildly out of control into a podcast.
Here is today's episode of The Andy Griffith Show. We are talking about Season 3, Episode 21, Opie and the Spoiled Kid. Originally airs February 18th, 1963, written by Jim Fritzl and Everett Greenbaum, and directed by, hello, I'd like to join your LinkedIn network, Bob Sweeney.
Says he's really passionate about interior design, but mostly just talks about banister materials, Bob Sweeney.
And here is your one-sentence summary from Wikipedia. A spoiled kid gives Opie bad advice about how Opie should manipulate Andy to get what he wants. I don't know that I agree with that assessment of what happens here. I mean, yes, that's what the episode is about, but that's not what the episode is about, if you get my drift. Right?
It's basically a manifesto on how to parent your fucking kid. There are, like, long stretches where Andy Griffith just looks to the camera and says, all right, here's how you're gonna want to do it. And just, like, lays out a prolonged philosophy. Like, if they do this, you do this. If they do this, you beat them.
Mickey, before we get into this, so you've never seen an episode of this show before. What did you think about the Andy Griffith Show based on just this one episode?
I mean, it definitely, I can see why, like, it was so popular, because it has, like, that sort of, like, everything's fine nostalgia. And, like, we're just gonna, it's, like, small town, this, that. I honestly was more upset with, like, who's that secondary character? Not, I'm assuming Andy Griffith is, like, the main character.
Barney Fife.
Barney Fife.
Okay. I feel bad for to him. Like, they're so mean to him. And I'm just like, what the hell? I was more upset about that. I'm like, don't call him sensitive because he has emotions. Like, come on.
Listen.
Let him be a part of it, too.
Listen.
We know that he has done so much on this show to deserve every bit of abuse he gets, but it is great we're in the vacuum. It's like just this small man in a very abusive relationship with his boss.
Yeah.
I'm just like, come on.
Yeah, that's so funny to me because like that you would just come in and like just feel so bad for him and have sympathy for him, whereas we've just been like, fuck that guy.
Yeah,
it's been 3 years of dealing with his bullshit. He deserves every amount of pain that happens to him. And, but since like there's no fucking continuity between any of this stuff, like you almost have to take each individual episode in a vacuum. And this episode, they're very mean to Barney for no real reason.
They're so mean to him.
well, I mean, he does like come in at one point and just talk a whole mess of shit on his friend's parenting style, where he just basically walks into a room. He's like, "Well, you just really fucked up hard, you bad parent." Like, and then Andy does like come back at him with knives. But he does, like, step in it a little bit. He specifically says, "You muffed it," which is one of the worst uses of the English language I've ever heard.
Alright, so the episode opens up with Andy and Barney going, I guess they're out on patrol or whatever, but they're basically just shit-talking this woman. They're just saying, like, hey, there's an old woman, she's suddenly got really gray hair, They start to gossip about her and her family problems. He says, Andy pulls Barney over to the side and says that her husband wants the whole family to move out of town. Barney goes, well, why? Well, he says that people talk about each other's business too much here. Wah, 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 wah.
Just two people being extraordinarily shitty about a woman's hair getting grayer.
Three people! Because the very next thing that happens is a woman coming out of the grocery store. Her name is Miss Rosenbach. She screams like she's being stabbed. You hear this horrible, oh!
Because a kid rode his bike through.
Yeah, because a kid rode his bike slightly too close to her.
She reacted like she was in one of the rooms in Saw.
The town's so small, like, I don't get why he can't, like, ride his bike on the sidewalk or the road. Like, I'm just slightly confused about that. Just, like, the whole point of this riding a bike situation.
There's, like, 8 people.
Just, like,
this kid,
okay.
This kid is a little shit, but also, there's, like, 6 people in the entire fucking town. There's more sidewalks than there are human beings in the town of Mayberry.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine.
So, this old woman, or this woman, it's not an old woman, but this woman, Miss Rosenbach, is picking up her groceries that got knocked over because of the kid on the bike. They immediately start shit-talking the other woman. It was just like, she's like, I couldn't even see that kid. I was too busy thinking about why this woman has gray hair.
Yeah. They're not, and it's not even like they're like, oh yeah, she really stopped taking care of herself. They're just like, man, Beth really is aging pretty hard right now. Like, time is really taking a fucking hammer to our member of the community. Anyway, I just got hit with a fucking bike.
There's a long bit where Barney is kind of lecturing her about like her memory because she didn't see any details about the kid. And Barney's basically goes off on how, well, it would be really good if everybody here was trained in police observation like I am. You know, it would be really good if you all had a photographic memory like I do. You know what's about to happen because you've seen any joke ever made. The kid zips by on the bike again. Barney doesn't get anything, and he gives that, oh, it all happened so fast. Okay, good joke, whatever. Back to Andy's house, where the actual plot of the episode comes in. So this kid, whose name is Arnold Winkler,
fucking hate this kid.
This
Arnold Winkler.
It's the worst name for the worst
I
child.
think it's like We're just gonna give him Arnold Winkler. That's the goodest. That's the best name we're gonna choose. Yep, that's gonna work.
You know
out.
what?
Name
You know
really
what?
should have been changed at Ellis Island. Like, they should have done them a solid and been like, "Oh, you guys' names are Winkler. We're just gonna do you a favor." Like,
How dare the two of you? How dare the two of you pick apart Arnold Winkler? This child who was portrayed wonderfully by the child actor Ronnie Dappo.
no fucking Dappo, Dappo.
Dappo, 1P.
It's not.
I mean, what's the other kid's name?
Well, Opie Taylor played by Ron Howard.
But his name's Opie Taylor. I mean,
That's true.
all of his
That's
names
true.
should get an upgrade.
That's
This
true.
is
Arnold
also
Winkler.
a thing that we have not addressed. Who the fuck names their kid Opie? What is that
Opie.
even short for?
And let's
I don't know.
I want to point something out here, though. Like, Ronnie Dappo is such a better fucking actor than Ronnie Howard.
Yeah.
This kid comes in, does a really good job of making me hate this kid. But also, I'm a little bit on Arnold's side for part of this.
What?
We'll figure it out. We'll find out. Anyway, so Arnold rolls in. He's the shitty kid who's been running people off on his bike. And he comes in to show his bike off to Opie. And let's be clear here. It's a sweet fucking bike, right? Like, can we just take a moment to appreciate the bike?
It's fine. I don't really like raised handlebar ass bikes like that.
It's a very, like, Pee Wee Herman ass bike.
Yeah. It does have a certain it's the Cadillac of bikes for a child. Like, they do go out of their way to make it shiny as fuck.
In the wonders of high def, I noticed that the bike wheel, what's the part where the chain, the gear part where the chain attaches?
No, you
has
guess
like,
it.
Yeah. It has, like, stars and moons cut out in it. It's sweet. If I was an 8-year-old boy, I'd be like, this bike is sweet as hell. He says, he comes in to show it off to Opie. He says the price of the bike. He says it was $70.
I know, first of all, a bike for $70. Let's talk about that for a second.
In 1960s money.
Oh yeah, what's the inflation for this? A bike for $70 now would.
Like, I just bought a bike and it was $400.
Yeah.
So, what is up?
Yeah, if you can get a bike for
$160,
$160, you fucking crushed it.
In 1963, if I purchased an item for $70, then today's so that is a $586 bike in today's money.
Okay.
So,
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah, that's
it's a nice bike.
pretty fucking legit.
that's a flex. That's a fucking flex right there.
That is such a stupid amount of money to spend on a bike for a child who is probably going to crash it into a river. Like,
I mean-
all things of spoiling kids with bikes. I crashed bikes constantly.
Absolutely.
I left a trail of carnage just because I would always try to jump things that were unjumpable. Like, there was a creek behind my house that was just full of bike viscera. It's just not a sound investment.
Arnold invites Opie to go out for a ride with him, and Opie says, I can't. I have to clean out the garage. If I don't clean out the garage, then I won't get my allowance. My allowance is $25 a week, right? Arnold seizes on that. Basically says, wait, you're getting $25 for this giant job of cleaning out the garage? And let me tell y'all, I wanted so badly to come in here and talk about how Andy's a cheap bitch. I wanted so badly to come in. I did the math on everything but the bike, apparently, to try to figure out, like, what Andy's salary would have been and how much would anything have cost. And is 25 cents a week a reasonable thing? And at first I got really upset by it. Even in 1963, 25 cents wouldn't buy you anything. It wouldn't get you, like, a Big Mac at McDonald's. That would be 27 cents. But I realized that I was looking at it the wrong way. I realized that I was looking at it in terms of things that, like, an adult would buy. Opie doesn't need to buy anything. All the food is provided for him. So what I finally figured out was in 1963, 25 cents a week would get you 2 comic books and a candy bar. Fine.
That's
That's
pretty good.
fine. That's a fine allowance for Opie to get 2 comic books and a candy bar a week. Keep that figure in mind, because I'm going to keep referring back to it like that.
Can I take advantage of the fact that there's 2 siblings here? Did you guys have allowances growing up? And if so, what were they in relation to each other?
I don't
I
remember.
don't think we had allowances.
I had my first job at like age 14, and that pretty much took.
I did also.
Yeah. I don't know if we were like ever financially stable enough to have an allowance. And I think if we did have an allowance, I pretty much after I got a job, I was just like, you know what? My allowance right now is in IOU status, so.
I do remember. Oh shit! I'm gonna talk shit right now. I do remember one time I had a piggy bank and Mom stole my money.
Mom
from
stole
the piggy bank.
so much money out of our savings. Oh my
I'm
god!
gonna talk shit right now. I'm sorry, but yeah, I remember one time I was like, I got money in this piggy bank. I've been saving it like birthday money, and I went and checked it, and it was gone.
Yeah.
And Mom had took she stole it from me.
I had a jar, like a glass jar full of dollars and stuff in my room for me to save up for stuff, and somehow that never got bigger. And
No.
somehow that whole jar was just 1s and 5s. Any 10s and 20s that were dropped in that jar suddenly disappeared. So that was why we didn't have an allowance, because like I think Mom tried to give us an allowance for a little while, but after about a month or so, she was already in debt to us in the allowance.
You had a line of credit to your mom. Do you have to have like a loan shark come after her?
Like honestly, call Mom. She owes us some interest at very least. Like if she had been making like student loan interest payments, like I wouldn't pay rent this year. But okay, so I want you to think about that two comic books and a candy bar figure. Basically, Arnold looks at this and says, "You're being suckered, Opie. You are being so gullible and so suckered. Your old man is taking advantage of you, getting you to do shit like this for a quarter a week." Opie kind of.
I just want to tell you, my note literally says "Oy vey." That's all my note says. That's all. Just keep going.
That's made it into our notes a couple of times.
Yeah. Opie says that there's no way that his old man would lie to him, but maybe he just hasn't heard the new rules about like inflation or whatever. Opie says, "I'm gonna go talk to my dad about this." Arnold's like, "Sure, whatever. Do it the hard way." So I was thinking about this figure of 2 comic books and a candy bar a week. Opie's chores are listed off several times in the episode. They say that he has to set the table for Aunt B, he has to make sure the wood box is full, and he has to clean out the ashes from the fireplace. And in exchange for those, he gets 25 cents or 2 comic books and a candy bar.
Does he get 25 cents per chore?
No, it says
Or
per
just
week.
for the day?
It says per week.
Okay.
Per week. And that's what bothered me most about this. So, like, first off, to get ready for this, I tried to Google, like, should kids get an allowance? And that led me down a rabbit hole of mommy blogs that I never want to get into ever. But I would argue that, right, the amount that Opie is paid is fine for those chores. However, when you add, I'm assuming that he doesn't clean out the garage every week. So if you say the whole purpose of having an allowance is to teach your child the value of money and to teach your child that what they get, when they work, they get a certain amount back. So if you say these chores that you do every week are worth 2 comic books and a candy bar, great. But when you start adding on other larger projects, like here you go, you have to do all your stuff plus clean out the garage, or here you go and you have to do all the stuff plus clean out another project equivalent to cleaning out the garage, then suddenly you're teaching your child that no matter what he does, no matter if he does a little work or a lot of work, it's always going to be worth 2 comic books and a candy bar, right? If you've already established one standard, one metric, and that is X labor equals Y value, then as soon as you start adding other shit, and by the way, we've seen Opie sweeping and cleaning up around the jailhouse too. So now he's doing like work that should be done by a public worker. that to me defeats the purpose of an allowance. You are teaching your kid incorrectly what the value of his labor is, and the whole fucking moral of this episode basically comes down to suck it up and deal with whatever your boss gives you because you are lucky to be working at all. Like,
essentially.
The whole moral here is don't you dare fucking negotiate. Don't ever ask for your share, Opie.
And I thought it was interesting how at the end, it was like he apologized. So he got like a cent. Was it like a cent?
2 cents.
Or something?
2 cents. He got
2 cents for apologizing, even though he wasn't asked to do so.
Yeah.
I just thought it was like an interesting, like, it was like, oh, okay, thank you for apologizing to me. Here's 2 extra cents or something. I just feel like a conversation could have been had. Like,
yeah.
That's you need to explain to your child, okay, here's why you're getting 2 extra cents. I feel like you need to draw, like, a line between those two things, because otherwise he's just gonna be like, well, when I shut up and don't ask questions, I get more money. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In fact, Opie comes to his dad to ask questions about stuff twice in this episode, and the second time, like, Andy's kind of like, "Why are you asking so many questions, kid? Like, why are you even doing this?" So the first time it happens is in the next scene. Go to the jailhouse. There's again another time where they just have to vamp, so they do like a 4-minute bit of Barney reading off funny names off the bounty posters, off the wanted posters.
They're not even, like, funny names. They're just, like, Stephen the Tongue Stevenson. He's a con artist. Like, it's just... And then he's like, these bounties are worth a lot of money. And Andy's like, yes, that's how bounties work. And they're like, yeah. End of bit. They're not, like, I thought they were going to be, like, crazy nicknames, but they're just, like Phil Knuckles Donahue. It's so dumb.
So Opie rolls in, and he gets right to the point. He's just like, Dad, I gotta talk to you about something. I want to know, are there rules for dads and kids? Like, is there a rule book that shows how you're supposed to do things? Barney hops in, and he's just like, boy, well, that's a silly question. And Andy's kind of says, nope, Barney, please don't backseat. Like, this is a Opie and Andy conversation, please go. He does it politely. He says, like, this is normally something that my son and I do together. And Barney, like, kind of slinks off with his feelings hurt. Mickey, this is where you said that they're really mean to Barney.
For me, I think, too, it's like, I'm also just like, you don't have to call him like the whole, like, he's sensitive. It's like, maybe he wants a kid and you guys are just mean to him. And he, like, doesn't have a child to parent. It's just sad.
He is like, well, if I had a child, and Andy's just like, fuck your imaginary child. Your child that doesn't exist because no one loves you enough.
Like, does he have a partner or, like, I don't really know his story.
Barney has a long-term girlfriend named Thelma Lou, who he is constantly trying to cheat on, like, consistently. This is
never mind.
Depending on the episode, they may or may not remember that his girlfriend Thelma Lou exists. So
okay, retract everything.
So Barney does want to have a child, specifically a son, just not with the woman he's dating.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they kind of make fun of Barney for being too sensitive because he kind of storms off and he starts eavesdropping on the conversation. Anyway, Opie kind of explains the update on his raised allowance. He says, so here's the new rules. Kids get 75 cents and they don't have to work for it. Did you know that, Dad? And Andy asks a pretty natural question, which was like, which kids? And as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that Opie did wrong here was having a sample size of 1. Right?
Yeah.
I think Opie, like, doing a poll of the kids in his neighborhood and being like, hey, guys, how much do you make? And what do you have to do for it? Him getting, like, salary data, basically, and then coming to his dad and saying, hey, other kids make this much and this is what I make. Can we work something out? That's just negotiation.
Yeah.
The problem is he picked one data point, and that data point is a statistical outlier.
Yeah. And he does not come in very hard. He's like, hey, because he's like, hey, I think maybe vaguely you should pay me more. I've heard rumblings of this fact. He should have come in and be like, hey, old man, like, the free ride's over. Like, no more.
Yeah, I've heard.
Like, Opie has all the leverage, because Andy has to work, but he also needs a clean garage. He could totally get that 2 cents through basically saying, like, oh, you don't want to pay me anymore? Clean your own fucking garage. Chop your own wood. Set your own goddamn table. I feel like Opie is doing more work for the amount of money he's getting.
Yeah, I mean, and I think when we go back to, like, what are allowances for? Like, I know.
All right, yeah, Mickey, what are allowances for?
Well, in general, they're supposed to, like, help teach, you know, how to work with money, that you get something, how to save it. It's, you know, like, practice saving money and getting it for work that you do. Like you were saying, I almost feel like, personally, I feel like things we do in our household, like normal day chores, like setting the table, doing the dishes, I don't think those necessarily need to have an allowance, because that's something that we just do as a family. I understand if they're wanting to say like 25 cents, whatever. However, if you're doing extra things like cleaning the garage or doing that stuff, that's what I think the allowance should be. You're getting money for doing extra and more work done.
Arnold,
You know?
Arnold makes the argument, and honestly, his argument makes sense to me, is that the word allowance means it's money you're allowed to have, you know?
He's coming at it from, like, a Noam Chomsky linguistic
Yeah.
area.
He makes a pretty solid argument, and that seems to be what the big debate is, on all of the mommy blogs that I looked at and then screamed nope and hit back as hard as I could, is should they be tied to chores? Should your allowance be tied to chores? And question mark, because like you want to teach your kid to do things because like you're responsible for your family and your community, but you also want to teach your kid that like we live in a capitalist society and you need to like do labor for.
Yeah, and that's like how we like to do it, right? We like to make little workers. We're only good for the work that we do. But I mean, I think that's the whole thing. It's like, why do we do chores and why do we get allowances? And I also think giving an allowance is a privilege to each family. Not every family is going to be able to give an allowance. And you've got two different families here. One is giving a lot more for little and the other one's giving a little for a lot more. So it's just two different parent perspectives.
And that's basically what Andy says right here. He says, well, guess what? There is no rules. Every family, every mother and father raises their son and daughter the way that they think is okay, or the way they think is best. And I think it's best for you to get a quarter and you work for it, because the greatest feeling in the world is working for your money. It's basically just like, hello, here is the Protestant work ethic.
Yeah.
Let me just lay it out for you here. And then Andy kind of says, something along the lines of, as you get older, you're going to do more and more work for more and more pay. And I just kind of scream at my television, no, you won't!
Are you?
I'm gonna give the Andy Griffith Show the benefit of the doubt here, because they're white people in 1963. He had no reason to expect that was ever going to change. It's 1963. We're in the most bountiful period in America's history. Yeah, I have no reason to. Also, I kind of did some math here based on the last episode, and Andy is way too young to remember the Great Depression. Like, he was definitely a kid during the Great Depression.
But basically, from where I'm sitting, it looks like he's conditioning Opie to be a complete doormat. That, will never ask his boss for a raise and will constantly be on, the middle manager level, getting completely stomped on.
I also feel like he's conditioning him to only do things if he gets something. Like, I'm only going to apologize if I get a 2% raise. I'm only going to do this if I get money. And I guess I'm only going to settle for what you're giving me because I should be grateful for whatever you give me anyways.
Yeah.
Because I don't get to choose.
Really?
But it's not...
Really, a lot of capitalism and American economic problems summed up in this episode.
Yeah, it's just like, guess I'll apologize if you give me a 2-cent raise, not apologize because I feel bad truly about something.
Would it like be better or worse if he was just like, hey man, Arnold's dad is clearly a fucking rich prick, and I am on a civil servant salary. I have like, I don't have the money to be throwing you bikes and ponies.
Well,
would that be better or worse?
I mean, in kid logic, I think it almost would be better to say, like, this, help explain what money is and how we get money, and explain that, like, yeah, his family might make a little bit more so they can allowance more to him. But I truly don't know. But
I feel like, because the message Andy is sending right now is like, oh, I could give you a raise in your allowance. I could make it rain quarters. I choose not to teach you a lesson like a omniscient god.
Okay. So later on in this episode, there is a scene. I was on board for this, but later on in this episode, it's just a throwaway line. But there is a scene where there is a hillbilly, a bumpkin. There's like a hillbilly sitting outside of the jail, and he's just whittling something. Andy walks over, he picks up the stick, and he goes, "Oh yeah, this is a fine whatever it is you're making here. Tell you what, when it's done, when you figure out what it is, come back and I'll give you 50 cents for it." So he's giving random hillbillies twice that money. He's giving 50 cents for garbage.
Yeah.
Dude's got quarters. Dude has quarters for days. He is one half of the entire county's police department. Like, dude.
To be fair, I also did research, and one person said it's not about how much, it's just about why. Mm-hmm. And I think really focusing on the why would be more important than focusing on the how much, which I don't think either parent really did. They only focused on how much money and not really the why, which he tried to do, but he did it in a very stagnant way.
He did say, like, the current situation, don't you feel a rush of euphoria when you finish working? Like, doesn't just dopamine just explode in your brain when you finish the garage? And Opie's like, not really. Andy's like, yeah, but yes, it does.
It's like when people are trying, like when you start to try to get into running, and people are like, if you run enough, you're gonna get that runner's high.
Lie.
And I'm like, no. You know what else could get me high? Drugs. And I don't have to run for them.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, ecstasy is great, but have you ever tried cleaning a garage in 1960s America? Same thing.
But two things here, because like all of this would make sense in a vacuum, but you have to consider two other factors about the Andy Griffith Show. Number one is that this family that has just moved in, they're new. Andy doesn't know them. They are new. They just moved in from Raleigh, which means they are already guilty of the greatest crime you can commit in Mayberry, which is not being from Mayberry. Also, this is the second time this season that, like, a new kid has shown up from Raleigh or from outside and has just been super shitty. Who are these parents moving to Mayberry? Who is moving to this town?
I mean, I think it's definitely giving that idea of, like, in this small town, we have these values that are only good values, and if you come from out of this town, you must be a bad parent and do it all. You must do, and like he goes to that with the end where he's like, better give that kid a spanking. It's like, come on now. And then, not everybody is a bad parent. Like, there's different ways of parenting. You say there's different ways of parenting, and then you're like, by the way, there's a shit out back. Better go do that thing. It's like, dude.
And he says it in terms of like, hey, we got a really nice woodshed back there. So he's like, go take your kid to the communal woodshed. It's where we all go to beat our children.
Yeah, Listeners, let's just get this out of the way. We won't wait till the end like the episode did.
Sorry.
This episode ends with Andy telling a father, "Hey, do you want to go beat your child?" Like this episode ends with a child getting beaten. And
on the basis of, he specifically says, like, well, there's a lot of ways to raise your kid. By the way, have you seen our kick-ass woodshed? We have such a nice old-fashioned woodshed, and the dad's like, it's a good woodshed, and he's like, it's a great woodshed, and Dad's like, gonna go beat my son. It's so fucking weird.
And then Opie's like, oh, is he gonna get a spanking? And he's like, don't you think he deserves it? And Opie's like, oh yeah. And I'm just like, what?
And then everyone high fives.
No, hang on. Opie pleads the fifth. Opie's exact words are, I'm not gonna say anything because he's one of my kind. So now Opie learns the meaning of solidarity.
Yeah, what the fuck was that? Makes it sound like you're from the same alien race. But we're from the same nationality of child. I cannot say words against him.
But the other thing I want to bring in from other episodes is that there's also the underlying Andy Griffith rule that, like, rich people are fine. If rich people get out of line, you just gotta say, hey, stop being like that, and then rich people will do it.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah. That's the old Andy Griffith thing of, like, rich people fucking suck unless you remind them not to suck, and then they're gonna be cool. Like,
which, again, 1963, there wasn't as a wide of a, like, income disparity. The owner of your company could live theoretically on the same block as you. So there wasn't as big of a difference between the rich people and poorer people. Mm-hmm. Again, asterisk, white people. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm willing to be forgiven on that, but, like, so many people internalized this shit and then grew up and ruined everything. That's the premise of our show.
It's why, like, all, like, the good, like, mainstream liberals are just basically like, oh, is Jeff Bezos going to, doing something horrible? Well, here's what I'm gonna do. I got this rolled up newspaper, and I'm gonna bop him on the nose, and then he's gonna start being a good person. Like, that's my strategy.
Well, and that, honestly, like, what I was thinking just from a child development perspective is, like, stop blaming the kid. The kid's not the one that needs a spanking.
Yeah,
like,
he's been
he continuously is, like, crying or doing these things, and you keep giving him things because of it. So you're making this behavior worse as, like, the adult in this situation. And then it's like, the only way to get my kid in line again, quote unquote, is to spank him versus actually doing some parenting or something like that. Or, like, talking to my kid and building a relationship with him.
Try just not giving him things first. Like, you went immediately from giving him anything he wants forever to beating his ass. Just do, like, one day where you don't give him ponies and then go from there. And if that doesn't work, then we can maybe talk about the fucking woodshed, but just do it on, like, a gradual process.
This entire episode is full of people who have never heard the phrase happy medium. Right?
Yeah.
No.
There has to be something between, like, I pay you 25 cents and I give you all the work, and also sometimes you do the work of my deputy, and I pay you 75 cents for no reason. There's somewhere in between there that y'all can meet. But
I mean, alright, so Arnold is a little shit. Because his dad gives him whatever he wants and has taught him that that is totally okay and great. And Arnold then, after following that lesson that his dad taught him his entire goddamn life, is suddenly one day beaten. And, like, that betrayal is gonna follow him the rest of his life because he's been like, I just did the thing you said was good.
Okay, all right, hang on.
You're whooping my ass.
Hang on, for our listeners' sake, I'm just gonna, like, zoom through the rest of the episode.
We're no longer going scene by scene. It's become untenable.
The rest of the scene is basically Opie running off. Barney comes in and he wants to talk some shit, basically. Says, hey, you should really smack your kid more. And Andy says, shut the fuck up. Don't talk to me about your fictional kid. You don't know anything because you don't have a child. A phrase that I know my sister has heard numerous times. But we'll get into that in a second.
Jeez, what?
We'll get into that in a second. Back at the house, Opie and Arnold are having, like, another lesson. And this is where Arnold says, don't try to talk it, throw a temper tantrum. Hold your breath. Later on, Barney pulls Arnold over for riding on the sidewalk. And then they take his bike away. And the whole climax of this, basically, there is the guy whittling. That's a weird bit. Opie tries to do a tantrum. It doesn't work. And then finally the dad and Arnold roll in. And Arnold just starts screaming and crying and saying, my dad's gonna make you give my bike back. My dad's gonna make you take this back. You'll be sorry when my dad shows up. So they have a little argument between Andy and the dad. And Andy says, you know what? Andy immediately, being a super cop right now, immediately goes, you know what?
I'll put you in jail.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Andy immediately says, you know what? Civil asset forfeiture, bitch. I can take your bike and I can put your dad in jail. And this is the scene how it unravels is that Arnold throws a fit. He says, "My dad doesn't care about your jail.
My dad is so tough that you can put him in jail and he won't give a shit."
Yeah. My dad doesn't care. And then this is the key line is that Andy says, "You don't care that your dad could go to jail?" And Arnold, in mid-tantrum, just says, "I want my bike." This apparently gives a huge revelation to Arnold's dad, who says, "Okay, I'm going to sell the bike now." And then Andy says, "Cool, you can sell the bike. Hey," and as we mentioned, "would you like to continue this out back? Out back?" And that's the conclusion of the episode. Here,
you're also missing the important part where, like, what's his face? I don't remember, the deputy or
Barney,
whatever.
Barney Fife.
He was like, the reason that they have his bike is because he rode on the sidewalk. Barney told him not to do that. And then he purposely did it again with one warning. And then was like, a police officer told you not to do this. And you didn't listen to this police officer. And you need to be respectful. So I'm going to take your bike. And that's where this whole thing came from.
Aside from everything, Arnold is fucking stupid because he commits a crime in front of a cop. The cop tells him not to do the crime. He immediately commits it again. And when a second cop grabs him and is like, "Hey, were you doing a crime?" He was like, "Yeah, I was. And he fucking warned me. And I don't care. And I don't even have a good fucking reason."
I mean, that's a kid, though. Like, this is such kid logic. He's like, "Yeah,
I knew how to lie as a child. If I got caught doing a crime, I knew to be like, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that. I knew that from, like, age 9. Like, this little dipshit.
I definitely had the ability to wait until the authority figure was away to do that shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Arnold was just like, "Oh yeah, I was riding on the sidewalk and there's weed in my pocket. What are you going to do about it?"
How old are these kids supposed to be anyways? Like, I don't even know how old they are.
8?
Oh, like
8? Maybe 9? Is the
okay. They're still little kids. Like, little kids.
I'm gonna be honest, I cannot identify kid ages. A kid could be 4 years old or 12. I have no fucking idea. It's always a surprise to me.
I think we think, like, 8 to 11 is, like, such a big age, but, like, we're still, like, kids.
Yeah.
Like, that's like when we're still, like, pretending to ride a horse and clomping around the neighborhood.
You're still basically a dog that can talk.
There are still many horse girls at age 8 to 11.
Yeah.
And some of those horse girls will remain horse girls well into sophomore year of high school.
Arguably college for some.
Well, but by that point, if you're still a horse girl in college, you're just a rich person. Like, by that point, you just actually own a horse. Like,
if you're a horse girl in college, you're Jerry Seinfeld's daughter.
I thought you were going to say Jerry Seinfeld's girlfriend. Quick reminder, Jerry Seinfeld dated a 17-year-old when he was 35.
Ew!
Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude.
I was going to try and do a Seinfeld voice and be like, I like, but I can't do it.
No, go for it. Do it, please.
What's the deal with age of consent laws?
Yes!
What's the deal with my girlfriend's algebra homework?
Gross!
Fellas, you ever had this problem where you don't want to take a car, but your girlfriend's only got a learner's permit?
Ew!
Fuck Jerry Seinfeld.
Fuck Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, no, I will never again watch an episode of a show that I've never watched before.
Oh, well, you're going to be really confused. You're going to be really confused when we bring you on as a guest for our next episode, Signcast, our next podcast.
A podcast about nothing.
Yeah, so basically this is what, so I want to get back to the scene we were in earlier though, where Barney shows up and he says, "Hey, I think you really screwed up with your kid. He needs more discipline." I've looked at, you can find clips of this episode pretty easily on YouTube, and the comments are pretty much what you expect them to be. They are 50% old people complaining that they can't beat children anymore, and the other 50% are saying, "Oh, those spoiled kids are just snowflakes like those SJWs and the BLM people." Yeah. So just really, this is a favorite episode of horrible, horrible fucking people. But I want to get into this where Barney comes in, and I'm not saying that Barney has a good suggestion. Barney's suggestion is you should beat your kid. But then Andy basically turns around and says, "Shut up, you don't know anything. You're hypothetical." He even says, "You're reading stuff out of a magazine, and that doesn't matter until you have an actual child in front of you, and you don't know what you're going to do." Mickey, how do you feel about that?
I mean, okay, I kind of agree because, like, I don't have kids myself. So I don't have that stress. I don't have that pressure of, like, being a parent. There's so much that goes into being a parent. You're raising a child. Like, I'm with kids and families for a certain amount of days, time and days, and then I leave. I don't have to raise a person. So, I mean, I kind of get it. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, I've studied this and maybe I have some ideas on what we could do together. And of course, I'm coming from, like, my teacher brain that's like, let's collaborate. And I'm not like a TV show. But I mean, I see both sides, but I also side with parents a lot because parenting is really hard. It's a hard thing to do.
This show, like, goes out of its way to show that Barney does some shitty things, but also sometimes it's just like, hey, Barney, fuck you for doing research.
Yeah.
Fuck you for trying to learn something, Barney.
Yeah.
In the next episode, I watched a little ahead. In the next episode, everyone thinks that Barney's ridiculous for trying to solve a crime using a surveillance camera. Like, everyone's like, you idiot, trying to use technology to solve crimes.
He went from, like, being shittily regressive to just being, like, progressive, and everyone is constantly dunking on him. Like, how dare you try the advanced society, you skinny bitch?
I mean, I will say the one thing parents hate most is, like, being told how to parent. It's, like, definitely not the thing.
Yeah.
They, like, especially if you don't have kids yourself, they're like, well, what do you know? And you're like, a little bit? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Did go to college for this.
Basically, so yeah, the whole conclusion of this happens after after Andy and Barney take away Arnold's bike. There is a temper tantrum, and as we pointed out, Arnold's father comes in, and Arnold keeps saying, "My dad is so tough, he's not scared of your jail."
Yes.
So the message that this episode thinks it is sending, this episode thinks it is saying, look at this spoiled brat. He doesn't even care that his father could go to jail. Look how spoiled he is. But that's not what the child says.
Arnold was warned and continued to ride his bicycle on the sidewalk. Now, we're going to impound that bicycle until he learns to use it according to regulation.
Oh, for heaven's sake, Sheriff, can't you see this is a very sensitive child? Obviously, you don't understand him. Arnold's a good boy. You just don't understand him.
Oh, I think I understand him.
He's a good boy, really. A little high-spirited, perhaps, but weren't we all at his age?
I wasn't. The law's the law, Mr. Winkler. Now, if we don't teach children to live in society today, what's going to happen to them when they grow up?
For heaven's sake, Sheriff, the boy's not a criminal.
I didn't say he was. Now, what he does at home's none of our business. But when he gets out on the street, he's going to have to answer to us. I can show you in the statute book. The minimum punishment for this offense is impounding the bicycle for 1 week.
Well, you can't do it. I demand you return that bike, and now.
Now, you look here. You're that boy's father. You're responsible for his actions. Now, he's too young to be locked up. But if you're not going to take responsibility, maybe I ought to lock you up. You ever think of that?
Yeah, well, my dad ain't scared of that, are you? Make them put you in jail. That'll show them. Go on, Dad. Show them they can't push me around. Go on, put him in jail. He won't care.
How's that?
My dad'll show you. He's tough.
You want me to lock your father up?
He ain't afraid of you. I don't want to lose my brand new bike. I just got it.
You'd rather I put your father in jail?
I want my bike.
No, he says, I believe in my dad, and I think my dad is awesome. Like, he's not like, oh, I don't care, he'll have a miserable time, but I'll get my bike back. He's like, my dad rules so fucking hard that you can put him in jail and it won't even faze him. This guy kicks ass and he's not afraid of you. And the dad is like, no, Arnold, I'm afraid of you, and now I hate you for believing in me.
Yeah, so in Arnold's brain, he just lost his bike and then got his ass beaten for believing in his dad.
Yeah, like, he just learned the worst lesson out of this possible, which is, don't trust your parents.
Second supervillain origin of the season.
Yeah. Like, Mickey, is there any way Arnold comes out of this not a sociopath? Leveraging your education, can you tell us, like, is there a way Arnold is okay?
Every single question you guys ask me, I keep thinking in my head, like, what if someone from my, like, interview process hears this message? Okay.
Do you want us to, like, bleep out your name?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think spanking your child does not do anything anyways. It's only showing, like, it's just recycling aggression. It's only showing, like, I guess, I don't know what to do, so I guess I'll hurt it. Like, that's how we get things to work, right? I'm gonna hurt it. I didn't like what you were doing. So, yeah, spanking, no.
Right.
But of course, you're gonna get those messages that are like, I wish we could spank our kids again. It's like, okay.
People get, like, mad. Like, I also have accidentally gone down, like, YouTube comment sections. People get mad that you can't beat other people's kids. Like, people are like, I miss the days where a child is acting up in the grocery store, and I would just go up and backhand a stranger's child, and everyone would be cool about it. Insane!
Well, and it's the what are children for? And I think at that time it was a lot of like, they're not supposed to like really be seen. They're just supposed to do what they're told, and you know, we'll just beat them into compliance if not. So.
Opie does have like a lot of freedom in this town. Like, Opie can do whatever he wants, basically.
On the basis of Opie is pretty chill. Like, Andy's not anti-beating your kid. Andy is just on the basis of, like, hey, I got a good kid, so we don't have to beat him. Like,
yeah, it's definitely written that, like, his family is top-notch and everyone else is not quite.
Yeah, I mean, if you give Opie just a slight character flaw, like, the only way that this can play out the way that it plays out is if Opie is just a generally good kid. Yeah. And even generally good kids are fucking shitheads sometimes. Because kids are assholes.
Yeah, they're kids.
Like, what if Opie hadn't left the allowance thing alone? Because now, honestly, I feel like that door's been opened. As a kid, I would have just been like, well, the issue has been raised, and I feel like if I poke this enough, I could get that extra 2 cents.
I don't know. He's also seen that, like, we can just go to the shed, so maybe if he does it.
Yeah, like, is Andy gonna, like, beat his ass if he doesn't shut up? Like, what is his...
Sounds like it.
His parenting is never actually put to the test because he has a good fucking kid, but, like, it sounds like if Opie ever stops being a good kid, he's going to the fucking shed.
Or, on the flip side of this, what happens if Arnold's dad calls Andy's bluff? What happens if Arnold's dad is like, do it. Slap the cuffs on me. Lawyer. What happens if Arnold's dad is just like, hello, I'm a rich person, and I have rich people lawyers. Yeah. We have seen people lawyer up to come after Andy before. Like, this was just... The only way that this plays out is if you believe in a world where, number one, your kid is just generally good, and number two, rich people won't pull fucked up shit.
Yeah.
Also, like, show me in the book what it says about riding your bike on the sidewalk. What kind of charge is that? Should I just get a ticket and move on with my day?
I don't think that's a real law. I don't think the cops can steal kids' bike.
Okay, wait. They specifically do say, like, Barney quotes the exact statute, and Andy says that here in the book it will say that the fine or the minimum penalty for that is 1 week of bike impoundment. So apparently they've had to write this into the Mayberry Town Charter.
Okay.
Like, it is...
When they said impound, I really thought they were gonna just like squish his bike, like break it. I was just like, Jesus.
Just get an entire trash compactor for cars just for this one child's bike. Just make him watch as it goes really slow.
The bike is just singing as it goes along, like that scene in Brave Little Toaster. Like,
just the bell starts to go at one point.
You all are thinking too small. Why on earth would a police department crush a confiscated item when they could sell it at auction? That's
also,
what the police do.
Do they not have anything else to do besides harass a child?
No. I mean, the more realistic thing would be for Barney to try to do one of those handlebar spins on the bike, break his collarbone, and sue the dad. That's more of a cop move.
Okay, so again, our new thing of like trying to figure out like how could this even have been resolved without the Mayberry PD at all? The only part that like is actual police work is confiscating the bike. And I kind of struggled with this for a little bit. I was like, all right, so if you're like a police abolitionist, what do you do for like traffic stops and like this? And every kind of like methodology or model for abolishing police still says like, yeah, there'll still be people to like pull over drunk drivers and stuff. Like they just won't have guns.
Yeah.
And then there are.
Oh my God! What if he had a gun over this bike and a kid?
Like,
then this would be a very different show.
What is happening?
This would be like season 3 of The Wire.
This could absolutely have been done without police authority. There would just be some kind of like traffic authority.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically it. And then the conclusion of this episode is that Opie comes in and he apologizes to his dad for he apologized for trying to throw a temper tantrum. We kind of we kind of blew past it. There is one scene where Opie does try to throw a tantrum and Andy just does not give a shit.
It's wildly unpleasant to watch. I was so uncomfortable the entire time.
So that was a mild tantrum. Like, Opie could have upped a notch there.
It was a weak-ass tantrum. He didn't put, like, I know he's inexperienced, but he didn't put any elbow grease into it whatsoever.
Which is so weird to me, right? Like, that Opie, an 8 or 9-year-old child, has to be introduced to the concept of a tantrum? Opie was a 2-year-old at some point, right?
I knew
Opie was a toddler.
I knew the holding my breath move as a kid. I didn't really do it that often. I think I did it like twice in my entire license. No Arnold rolled up and was like, you know what's a super good power move? Holding your breath. I was just like, I'll just do a thing that might make me die, and it'll give me leverage over my parents. My 7-year-old brain has decided this.
Yeah. What a weird power control move, right?
I'm gonna maybe die, idiots.
It's so annoying and such bad writing that like we just have to believe that Opie's just such a generally good kid.
Yeah.
That the idea of throwing a temper tantrum to get what you want has never occurred to this child in all of his 8 or 9 years of living.
Did he ever get upset? Like,
not really. You can do whatever you want to Opie. You can throw like a pine cone at his head and he'll just be like, yeah, no, he has no concept of like self-defense or how he should be treated by the world. Yeah, you can just whip stuff at Opie's head and he'll just be like, I'm sure my father has a good reason for why this is happening. Like,
I'm gonna disagree with you there, Dan. I'm gonna disagree with you. It's kind of like Opie has 2 modes. One is just like silly putty Opie that you can just poke at him and do. And then the other mode is, again, the exact opposite extreme, which is Opie's here to fuck shit up.
Oh, yeah, Opie does get super violent at times.
Sometimes Opie's just like, listen. Sometimes,
oh, yeah.
In the other supervillain origin episode of this season, Opie just comes in and is like, hey, Dad, I gotta go fuck a kid up. I need you to pretend you're not the sheriff for a little bit. I gotta go kick some kid's ass.
Yeah. And that's a reoccurring thing of Opie just rolling in and being like, "Oh yeah, I just beat a kid's ass. I just
Opie feels all of this. Here's what I'm learning.
Spanking.
Here's what I'm learning from this episode.
Let's bring this in. Opie's regularly violent. Thoughts, feelings, emotions as a childcare professional, as an expert in this field.
Okay. Anyways, I just think it's all about spanking. He's just being taught oh, I don't like something, I'm just going to be violent towards it to try and get my way, or to have someone else comply to what I want them to do. And of course, I'm texting Marty during this saying intrinsic value and relationships and communication, and Marty's like, it's 1963 or whatever. Just okay, but let's build actual relationships with our children. He's like, yeah, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, no, it's not hard concepts though, on a fundamental level. Your kid is it's basically you can chart how Arnold is fucked up forever on just a Pavlovian level of just you shocked him and you gave him cheese, and based off of those lessons you just taught, he's going to start robbing drugstores.
Or he's gonna be the other Opie and just start beating kids up for no reason.
Okay. What are the reasons why Opie has hit kids before? There was one episode where it was a full 22-minute decision of Opie just being like, am I gonna fight this guy? This guy is really... He
was bullying him and taking his lunch money.
Okay.
There was another where he was a bad influence on his friends, and he was kind of icing him out of his social circle. A new alpha dog came in, started teaching all the other kids crimes, and isolated Opie. And then another one of his friends made fun of his girlfriend's coat.
Yeah. So he punched that kid in the face.
Those are the three I remember.
Those are the three that pop up to my is in times.
Did his dad care that he's punching kids?
Nope.
No.
It's overwhelmingly been rewarded.
Okay, so I'm sorry. A child who is quote unquote spoiled is definitely not okay, but your kid who is literally punching people is definitely all right. That is totally fine.
Who is just going Street Fighter on this entire fucking town?
In fairness, one of those times he did not actually hit the kid. He just threatened to and stood his ground, and the kid ran away.
Okay. Yeah,
so bottom line here, the episode ends with Opie apologizing to Andy for the temper tantrum he tried to throw earlier. The lesson Opie learned here is, I guess, if I try to do this, I might get beat, or somebody might get thrown in jail. It's really fucking muddled.
Yeah.
It's really muddled here.
He learns the lesson of keep your eyes down and your mouth shut if you know what's
he's like,
good
oh,
for
I'm
you.
real sorry about that. I don't want to go to the woodshed. He's one of my own.
Yeah.
All right.
And then as a result of this, Andy's like, I guess you're growing up a little bit. How's 27 cents a week? No, come on, Andy. At least make it an even 30. Give us 2 comic books and 2 candy bars, or 3 comic books, depending on how you look at it.
Or if you're going to be doing big things like doing the garage or cleaning up at our shop, I'm going to give you that 75 that you wanted, but your extra chores are still going to be 25.
Yeah.
Something like that, like cleaning out a whole garage by yourself at 9 years old. That's a big job.
That is a big fucking job.
I will remind you again, we have seen him cleaning up the jailhouse, which should not be his responsibility at all. That is public work. Give Otis that job.
How fucking dirty does this motherfucking garage get, though? You need to have a kid cleaning it on the weekly. What are you doing in this garage?
Also, it almost seems like it's already clean. They're just having him sort of take shit out and reorganize it for no reason.
Oh, you know what? That might be it. It might just be just giving Opie busy work.
We just need you to do something. because
you can't just give somebody something. They have to somewhat earn it. So he he may have Opie cleaning out an already clean garage. I did not consider that.
It's just like, that's your thing too. But like, Opie could be riding his bike with his friends.
Yeah.
At the end of these episodes, Mickey, we do 2 scales, 1 to 10. The first is the Andy meter, which is how good was this episode? Like, how much did you actually enjoy watching it? And the second is the FIFO meter, which is how fucked up was this episode? How much unhealthy shit did people learn from it? So, let's go first on the Andy meter. Did you, as just a piece of television, did you enjoy watching this?
I mean, it was kind of like mind-numbing. Like, it wasn't really like much to like engage with. I think that's the thing about it. So I think that's why people like it, because it's very like this or that. Like, it's either you're a good kid or you're not a good kid, and so it's like easy to watch, but it's not real life. Yeah.
So uncomplicated and yet so complicated at this very same time that we've been talking about it for an hour and 20 minutes, and Dan and I have been talking about it for 2.5 years. Like,
all right, and the FIFO meter, and don't worry about the relative scale to all other episodes because you haven't seen them. What in your gut? How fucked up is this episode?
1 to 10. Also, you never gave me an Andy number.
Oh, is it 1 to 10 on like 10 as being the best? Wait.
Well, okay, so.
I don't know scales, apparently.
I guess, like, 10 would be like, yeah, I really loved this episode. I got really excited. I would watch it again. 1 is this is garbage. And then for the FIFO meter, it's like 10 is this is the most fucked up thing I've ever seen.
10 is like I want someone to go to jail for this. And 1 is like, it's fine.
Okay. For watching it, I mean, I guess I'd give it like a 2. Mm-hmm. It's like whatever.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I probably would have like at a 9 for like how fucked up it is. Yeah. It's pretty up there.
It is. There is so much going on in this.
They could have like wrapped it up at the end, and it wouldn't have been so messed up if there wasn't the whole shed thing.
Yeah,
like it could have just been like, all right, like this family is a little weak, like gives a little bit more on this family, but then it's like, and now we're gonna beat your children.
It's so tacked on too, because the dad is like, you know what, Sheriff, I've learned my lesson, and I'm going to be a better parent. And Andy's like, cool, you want to also beat him? Like while we're racking stuff up, you want to throw a beating in there?
I have a
like we're leaving.
Yeah.
I have a theory. That there was, and there's no way I can prove this, but I have a theory that there was an extra joke that was cut because it was just way too dark. Do you remember right before the temper tantrum scene, right before all this happens, there is that man out on the bench carving something with a stick. He's carving out a piece of wood. Mm-hmm. I bet in the original script there was a joke about that guy no longer having his piece of wood. Like, he already got paid 50 cents for that piece of wood because Arnold's dad grabbed it from him and beat his kid with it. I bet that the reason for introducing that guy with the piece of wood outside of the jail was to come up with a paddling and spanking joke later on that got cut.
Yeah, I could really see that.
Because there's no other reason for that. I have no way of knowing this. This is just a theory of mine. But I think that's why that character is there. And then they probably removed the joke later because holy fuck no. Even in 1963 we can't do that.
Yeah.
But they left in the part about the guy with the weird stick outside, which makes sense.
It's like a wood shed. So
yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to say Andy meter, like, this episode isn't particularly funny. It's not that interesting. I'm going to say, like, I like the kid that plays Arnold. Like,
he's doing work.
Way better actor than Ronnie Howard is. Solid, it's like, solid work. 4, I guess. It's a 4 for me.
It's like a 3. I'm going to try to forget it as soon as this is over.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm going to put it up there as a 9. There's so much weird shit about labor, about child rearing. This is definitely the biggest one we've had all season about just like
I feel like we only got a piece of it. Like, I don't think I think there's more. I could write a fucking thesis on how fucked up this episode is.
The thing about like working with kids, being a parent, whatever. You're going to make mistakes. Stuff's going to happen. You're never perfect. The number one thing we should all know, though, is, like, beating your child as an adult, just like laying your hand on another child, is probably not the best choice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, when you're asking, like, it's like parenting is hard, but the number one thing is probably like, we're not going to the woodshed. That's a no.
And it's so weird how, like, just drawing that line makes so many people so furious. Like, this is definitely going to get the podcast episode that gets us hate mail. Like, this is definitely the one that's going to piss people off. Like, people are so adamant about their right to hit kids.
Yeah.
Like,
such a very weird, specific thing. But yeah, it draws, like, basically says, like, listen, there is a good way and a bad way to raise a kid, and also hit them. Like, it does the exact opposite of everything that you have been taught. Like there is a quantitative judgment of how to raise a child, and also, unrelated to that, beat your kids.
Yeah. It could have just ended. Like, okay, that's a natural consequence. Your bike got taken away.
Yeah. We're
going home now, and we have, like, some stuff. Maybe we're going to take all, I don't know, something goes with all your stuff. But, like, the woodshed, like, where did that even come from?
That's the craziest aspect, is the episode was over. They were done. It was, like, in the process of fading to black, and then Andy, like, was like, oh, by the way, you want to beat your kid? And just the lights come back, and he's like, oh, yeah, totally.
It was it was fading, and the music was coming up, like, do record scratch. Oh, by the way, smack him around a bit.
Were starting to roll. Like, the first name had started to come up, and Andy was
directed
like,
by Bob
way,
Sweeney.
And then it just shoots back down. It was so weird. It comes so out of left field.
Hey, by the way, why don't you beat your kids, Bob Sweeney?
Yeah, like, someone was about, like, listen, market research shows that people really respond to beating your kids. Can we work that in there? And they were just like, yeah, we'll just film, like, an extra 5 seconds of dialogue.
You know what I wish this episode was, though, right? Because, like, this episode starts off with Opie, like, negotiating his allowance, right? I wish that we had gotten one where Opie does, like, do a survey. I wish that we had gotten one where the kids unionize, basically. I wish we had gotten one where the kids get together and they go on strike and refuse to, like, do their chores until they all get a raise of 25 cents a week or whatever.
Oh, Marty, that would be a good show.
My version was like, I wish that this would show, like, a good conversation where parents discuss things and talk about, when we're angry, what we can do. It's like, well.
Yeah, but mine might be actually entertaining as a piece of television. Yours is boring. People learn shit.
Well, yours.
Healthy emotions serve no purpose on television, Michaela.
But they serve it in life, okay?
Oh, God. Yeah, so I'm gonna say 9 for me, too.
Oh, yeah, we were doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so that's it for this episode. Mickey, thank you for being on, and probably never coming on again. This is
thank you so much. This was awesome.
This is great. I get to, like, look at my sister's face.
Such a weird way to phrase that, Martin.
That's our show. As always, on the internet, we are at Break Mayberry on Twitter, Facebook.com/Breaking Mayberry, Instagram, we are Breaking Mayberry. If you want to support us with your money dollars, we are Patreon.com/Breaking Mayberry. And if you don't want to support us with your money dollars, but you still want to support us, give us those likes, subscriptions, reviews, ratings, etc., etc. It's been a while since we got one of those. On the internet, I am on Twitter at Schneid That's SCHNEID Remarks.
I'm at the Luds, 2 Ds.
Speaking of siblings, the music that you heard at the beginning and the music you're about to hear was composed by Dan's brother, Max Ludwig, who streams on Twitch as Sleep Talkie, twitch.com/TV/Sleep Talkie. That's pretty much it for all of us here. I got nothing else. Mickey, thanks for being on. And
thank you.
For the rest of y'all, we'll see you all down at the fishing hole.